On the day everything changed, I was standing in my grandmother's kitchen, sunlight spilling through the curtains, when my aunt pressed an old brass key into my hand and said words that would turn my life upside down. But before I do, tell me where you're from in the comments, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss stories like this. Now, let me take you back to how it all began. I had just returned from the city, worn down from a year of struggling to keep myself afloat. Jobs never lasted, money never stretched, and I felt like I was barely holding on. My Aunt Clara looked at me with soft but serious eyes as she closed my fingers around that heavy brass key. "Your grandmother wanted you to have this," she said. "You know why?" The truth was I didn't. Not really. The key belonged to Greyhaven House, the family home perched on a cliff that overlooked the restless sea. It was more than a house. It was a place that held generations of birthdays, holidays, and memories stitched together in laughter and quiet conversations. For us cousins, it was a playground, a sanctuary, a treasure chest of childhood secrets. But for the adults in my family, it had become something else entirely. A prize, a possession, a property worth millions. Clara's voice softened. "She trusted you, Danny. Not because you're the eldest or the strongest. Because you listen. You keep promises." I nodded, though a lump in my throat made it hard to speak. Greyhaven wasn't just a building. It was the heart of my grandmother's life, a piece of her soul that still lingered in the roses climbing the fences and the waves crashing far below. She always told me it should never be sold, that some things were worth more than money. At the time, I thought she was being poetic. Only later did I understand how serious she was. 3 days after the funeral, the storm began. My Uncle Victor, a polished lawyer with sharp eyes and sharper words, called a family meeting in the dining room. The table was as long as a boat. The chandelier glittered above us, but all I could feel was tension. "We need to discuss the estate," he began smoothly. "It's only fair to divide everything evenly. The house should be sold, the profits split. That's logical." My mother, Eleanor, nodded in agreement, her lips tight, while my cousins murmured along. Clara sat silently at the far end, watching. Cleared my throat. Grandma left the house to me. The silence was deafening for a moment. Then laughter erupted. Cold, dismissive laughter. Victor leaned forward, his smile cruel. "To you? Don't be ridiculous. You can't even take care of yourself, let alone a house like this." My cheeks burned, but I forced myself to speak steadily. "She gave me the key," she told Clara. "It was her choice." "That's not legal," Victor snapped. "We'll see what the will says." And the will did say. A week later, it was read aloud. Greyhaven House in its entirety was left to me. The rest of the estate was divided among the family. The room erupted. My mother cried, saying it wasn't fair. Victor threatened to challenge the will in court. My cousins stared at me like I'd stolen their inheritance. Only Clara touched my arm and whispered, "Stay steady. They'll test you." That night, sitting alone in the study, I wondered if I could handle the weight of it all. The repairs, the taxes, the constant hostility. Selling the house would solve every problem. But when I opened the drawer of my grandmother's desk, I found a sealed envelope with my name on it. Her handwriting trembled on the page, but her words were firm. "Danny, if you're reading this, it means I've gone. This house is yours because I trust your heart. Don't let them tear it apart. Protect Greyhaven. Protect what is sacred. You'll understand in time." I wiped tears from my eyes and folded the letter back into my pocket. That was the moment I decided. I would not sell. The pressure came fast. My mother brought pastries and gentle persuasion. "Danny, darling, think of your future. If you sell, you'll finally have money for school, for a real life." When that failed, Victor turned to threats. "The taxes will crush you. You'll drown in debt. Better to sell now while the market's hot." I held firm. The house isn't for sale. But greed doesn't quit at the first no. One rainy evening, I came home to find strangers on the property. Men with cameras, measuring tape, and clipboards. Realtors. "Who let you in?" I demanded. "Mr. Victor Caldwell," one replied. "He said he was the co-owner." Rage burned in my chest. I ordered them out, locked the gates, and realized the truth. This fight wouldn't end with words. I called Jonah, my oldest friend, who had always been good with technology and strategy. He listened carefully before saying, "They're going to push until you break. Don't break. Get ahead of them. Secure the deed, document everything, and keep records." With his help, I set up security cameras, filed paperwork to put the property in a trust under my sole control, and gathered every letter my grandmother had ever written about the house. Clara helped too, finding signed notes from Grandma that made her wishes clear. Then, one afternoon 2 months later, the storm reached its peak. Victor arrived with movers. Big men in uniforms began unloading boxes, acting as if they were moving in. My cousins stood smugly by, recording on their phones, probably hoping to capture me losing control. I stepped onto the porch, heart racing but voice calm. "You're trespassing. Leave now." Victor smirked. "The paperwork says otherwise. You're out of your depth." But I had prepared. I pulled out the folder, the trust documents, the will, the notarized letters. I had also called a county officer, who now stepped forward from his car parked nearby. He reviewed the documents carefully, then turned to Victor. "Sir, you have no legal standing here. If you continue, you'll face charges for trespassing and fraud." The movers froze. My cousins stopped filming. Victor's face twisted with fury, but the law was on my side. One by one, they left. For the first time, the driveway was silent again. The only sound the sea and the wind through the roses. The weeks after were filled with bitterness. My family smeared me online, called me greedy, claimed I forged papers. But every accusation crumbled against the evidence. Victor's law firm distanced themselves. My cousins vanished from my life. My mother stopped calling. It hurt, but through the hurt came pride. I had kept my promise. At night, I sat on the porch with Clara and Jonah, the waves echoing below, the roses blooming red again. For the first time, Greyhaven felt safe. I realized then, this wasn't just a house. It was a lesson carved into stone. Families can betray, greed can consume, but truth, preparation, and quiet resolve can outlast any storm. The months after the showdown with Victor were not easy, even though I had won the first battle. Greyhaven House was safe legally, but peace in the family was gone. Every day I woke up to silence where once there had been phone calls and family dinners. Holidays came and went without invitations, without greetings, without even a card. It felt as if I had been erased from my own bloodline. At first, the loneliness was crushing. I would walk through the long hallways of Greyhaven and hear the echoes of childhood laughter, only to realize those voices would never return. My cousins unfriended me on every platform, blocked my number, and spread stories about me to mutual friends. "Danny's selfish," they said. "He tricked Grandma into giving him the house." None of it was true, but gossip rarely cares about truth. One night, sitting with Jonah in the old library, I confessed, "Maybe I should have sold it. Maybe it isn't worth losing everyone." Jonah shook his head firmly. "Listen, families break apart over money all the time. It hurts, but think about this. Your grandmother chose you because she knew you could carry the weight. If you had sold it, you would have betrayed her trust. And then what? You'd be rich but empty." He was right, but the words didn't erase the ache in my chest. Clara became my anchor in those months. She would visit with her basket of fresh bread, sit in the garden, and remind me of the stories Grandma told her. "She believed in you," Clara repeated again and again. "Don't doubt that." Then, one autumn morning, a letter arrived that shifted the ground beneath my feet again. It wasn't from family. It was from a historian named Dr. Emily Caro, who specialized in coastal estates. She had discovered that Greyhaven wasn't just an old house with sentimental value. It was a landmark, one of the last surviving estates built in its unique style. "I would like to meet," the letter read. "Greyhaven should be preserved, not demolished or sold. It carries a history far larger than your family." When I met Emily, she was brisk and passionate, her hands waving as she spoke about the architecture, the cultural heritage, the importance of keeping such a property intact. "Do you realize what you're holding on to?" she asked, eyes bright. "This isn't just your grandmother's house. This is a piece of history." Her words were a spark in the dark. For months I had been defending Greyhaven out of loyalty and memory. Now I understood it was bigger than that. Protecting it wasn't just about honoring Grandma. It was about preserving something irreplaceable. I threw myself into research, learning about restoration grants, historical societies, and preservation funds. Jonah helped me set up digital archives. Emily connected me with people who cared about heritage. Suddenly, Greyhaven wasn't a lonely burden. It was a mission. Of course, the family wasn't finished. Victor reappeared, furious that the house had gained recognition. "You're making it harder to sell," he snarled over the phone one evening. "Do you know how much money you're costing us?" I kept my voice calm. It was never for sale, and now it never can be. That pushed him over the edge. He filed a lawsuit, claiming Grandma had been manipulated when she signed the will. It was cruel and insulting, but I wasn't surprised. This was Victor's nature. If he couldn't win with charm, he'd try with force. The court battle dragged on for nearly a year. Depositions, hearings, endless paperwork. They tried to paint me as unstable, irresponsible, unworthy. They dug into my job history, my debts, even my medical records. Every weakness was dragged into the light. But Clara stood by me. Jonah testified to my character, and Emily spoke passionately about the cultural value of Greyhaven. Most of all, the documents, Grandma's letters, the trust papers, the notarized will, stood stronger than any accusation. The judge's decision was firm. The house remained mine, undisputed. Victor's case collapsed. The victory should have felt sweet, but in truth it was bittersweet. My mother didn't speak to me afterward. My cousins didn't apologize. The family dinners of my childhood were gone forever. I realized then that victory often comes with a price. Sometimes protecting what's right means letting go of what you hoped would last. Greyhaven, though, thrived. With grants and donations, I restored the crumbling roof, repaired the gardens, repainted the shutters. The house seemed to breathe again, as if grateful. Visitors came to tour, to learn, to marvel. I hosted community events, opened the library for local students, and watched as Greyhaven became not just my refuge, but a place that belonged to everyone. One evening, after a long day of repairs, I stood on the porch with Jonah and Clara, watching the sun sink into the sea. "You know," Jonah said, "you didn't just save a house, you turned it into a legacy." Clara smiled softly. "Your grandmother would be proud." I felt the truth of it in my bones. And yet, there was still one lesson I hadn't fully understood until much later. It wasn't just about greed or betrayal or even about preservation. It was about resilience, about learning that even when those closest to you turn away, you can still build something lasting, something good. Greyhaven taught me that. My grandmother taught me that. And now, every visitor who walks through its doors learns it too. Greyhaven became more than just a family inheritance. It became my responsibility, my work, and eventually my purpose. People from the town started to see it not just as an old house but as a gathering place. I opened the gardens for weddings, the library for school trips, and the large dining hall for community meetings. Every event brought life back into the walls that had once been silent. But with the new purpose came new challenges. Running Greyhaven wasn't cheap. Heating the old house through the winter drained funds faster than donations could come in. The roof, though patched, needed a complete overhaul. The seawall below the cliff was slowly eroding. Every day, a fresh worry landed on my shoulders. One night, exhausted, I sat with the bills spread out on the table, my head in my hands. Jonah leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "You can't do this alone forever," he said gently. "I don't have a choice," I muttered. "If I slip up even once, Victor will swoop in again. He's just waiting." Jonah stepped closer. "Then stop trying to carry the world by yourself. Build a team. Let others invest in this place, not just financially but emotionally. Greyhaven is bigger than you now." Those words stayed with me. Slowly, I began inviting people in, not just as visitors but as partners. A local carpenter offered to repair the staircases in exchange for hosting his daughter's wedding in the gardens. A retired teacher volunteered to catalog the library. High school students helped clean the grounds as part of their service projects. Piece by piece, Greyhaven became not just my house, but everyone's. Still, my family loomed in the background like a shadow. My mother never visited, though sometimes I caught glimpses of her car parked down the road, watching quietly. My cousins avoided me entirely. Victor had gone silent, but silence from him was never peace. It was plotting. The storm broke again when a slick businessman appeared at my door one morning. His name was Marcus Hale, and he carried himself with the confidence of someone who was used to getting what he wanted. "I represent a development company," he said smoothly, handing me his card. "We're interested in Grey Haven. We'd like to make you an offer. More money than you could dream of." I didn't even look at the number. "It's not for sale." Marcus's smile didn't falter. "Everyone has a price. Think it over." For weeks after, letters came, then emails, then phone calls. Each offer was higher than the last. And then, one day, I realized the company Marcus worked for was tied directly to Victor. He had found a new way to come after Grey Haven through outside buyers. Instead of panicking, I decided to go public. I spoke to the local paper, shared the story of my grandmother's legacy, and announced plans to apply for Grey Haven to become a fully protected heritage site. Once it was listed, no one could ever sell it, demolish it, or change it without approval. The process was long and grueling, but the community rallied behind me. Thousands signed petitions. Local officials visited, impressed by the restoration work. Emily, the historian, gave speeches about the house's cultural value. And then the day came. Grey Haven was officially declared a protected heritage landmark. The news spread across the state. Reporters came, cameras flashed, and for the first time I felt untouchable. Victor's last plan had failed. But the moment wasn't about revenge. Standing on the porch, looking at the sea and the crowd gathered to celebrate, I felt something deeper: peace. The years that followed turned Grey Haven into a beacon. Couples married beneath its arches. Children played in its gardens. Writers and artists found inspiration within its walls. And I, once the outsider, became its caretaker, its storyteller, its protector. My relationship with my family never fully healed. My mother remained distant, though one Christmas she sent a small card that simply read, "I hope you're well." My cousins moved on with their lives, chasing careers and comforts. Victor, defeated, disappeared into the background. It hurt, yes, but by then I had built something stronger than their approval. I had built a community. One evening, years later, I walked through the library with Clara, now older but still sharp-eyed. She touched the polished wood of the shelves and whispered, "Your grandmother would be so proud. You didn't just keep the promise. You created something living." I smiled, thinking of the brass key that had started it all. That small piece of metal had opened more than a door. It had opened a journey of struggle, betrayal, resilience, and finally, belonging. The lesson of Grey Haven was clear. Family isn't just blood. Family is trust. Family is loyalty. And sometimes, when blood turns against you, the family you build, the friends, the community, the people who stand with you, matters even more. If there's one thing I hope anyone takes from my story, it's this: when you protect what is right, even if it costs you comfort, you gain something far greater. You gain peace, you gain legacy, and you gain the strength to stand tall no matter the storm. So if you ever face betrayal or pressure to give up what you know is right, remember Grey Haven. Remember that one person's quiet resolve can hold back even the loudest waves. And never forget, the things worth protecting are never easy to keep, but they are always worth the fight.